least it's not so loud. Last week when we were trying to pour water, it was like, cool, cool. It was the loud.
Oh my gosh, I heard it.
It was so loud for some reason.
Terry, you good to go? Yes. Okay. All right, Ben. I'd like to call the Saline City Council work meeting to order at 6 p.m. on November the 20th, 2023. Members present this evening are council members CO, Delorco, Gearbaugh, Rice, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Morrow. From city staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Parks and Rec Director Lambert, and Treasurer Cole. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, we welcome you and we encourage you to sign in the back to my left. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to excuse the absence of Councilmember Kamara Sulek, who will not be here for either the work or regular meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh to excuse. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Delorco. All those in favor of excusing the absence signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We come now to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments from those in the audience this evening? Please, you may approach the podium, and as soon as you begin, you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cindy Pettibone. I've been a member of the Rec Center for 3 years and lived in the community for, about 7. I represent the water aerobic seniors, the people who've been buying memberships and taking classes for the past 20-plus years. We're a smaller demographic, but we're important because we attend the center during off hours. And I've just been very worried, and other folks in my group were worried because you seem to neglect the importance of the senior well-being in the feasibility study, and also the therapeutic importance of water exercise in anti-aging and recovery from joint surgery and other types of surgery. I've studied the schematic of the proposed pool design on page 42 of the handout last meeting, and I have trouble visualizing our water aerobic space. The lazy river takes up 1/3 of the pool, and it will have limited use. My final issue is the failure to price out the necessary expenditures for correcting the current pool issues: filtration system, heater, decking, etc., keeping the current pool footprint and your $6.7 to $7.3 million indoor water park vision. There seems to be a lot of space between just maintaining in really good condition, doing capital improvements to keep the status quo, and the water park vision. So I would like to see some incremental designs which would be maybe more acceptable to the taxpayers and the current pool users. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate your remarks, and hopefully we'll be able to address some of those questions and concerns when we get to the presentation of tonight's agenda. Are there additional citizen comments from those in the audience this evening? Please.
Good evening. Chang Ming Fan, local residents, local social entrepreneur. Ms. Mayor, I want to give a comments about the senior center and rebuilding or modification. Is a topic I can talk or after?
Say that one more time, Al.
Senior center in Saline, and we raise the money. The budget will designate quite a lot of portion of that to build or rebuild the senior center. That area, I like just briefly mention about one thing, which is I support the taxpayers' decision. One thing I want to add is that especially 2 reasons is we have to consider how the money we're going to spend. Seniors, especially Saline, contribute hugely to the development, not just past, now, and the future. One of the programs, what we should consider, and also including the great work and you guys have done, it is lifetime teaching rather than just lifetime learning. I think that it is very important to talk about how the seniors can contribute to teach and learn. As you know that the demographic have huge change. The seniors have longer lives and the birth rate reduced worldwide, especially in the US. So we have to really consider, if we raise a lot of money, seniors just do the exercise and live longer, and that might not be happy. Their potential have to consider. The leader and we elected should really have forward-looking, considered about the seniors' contribution in teach and give a lot of contribution, and therefore the classrooms and everything have to consider. And I think that there's a gap between the young, the middle-aged, and the old. And you can see clearly by looking at the schools, the sports, and the classical music, and the way they view about the future. Now, I think by teaching each other, young, old, middle-aged, that we can bring this society more harmonic. And right now, we have a lot of gaps. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chang-Ming. Are there additional citizen comments on this agenda item this evening? Then I would defer to the city clerk. Clerk Roy, were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time?
No, sir.
Easy enough. Then we'll transition to the one and only discussion item, which is a follow-up on our rec center feasibility study and the financial considerations. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. So we last hosted a work session on October 2nd in which we considered the outcomes of the rec center feasibility study. A big takeaway from that particular meeting was that we needed a better understanding of the financial impact of any potential renovation, and certainly what is and can be done to stabilize operations in the near term. So this presentation aims to answer those questions, really with the goal of gathering council feedback to further drill down on what we might wish to pursue or consider in the future. With me today is City Treasurer Al Cole and Parks and Recreation Director Sunshine Lambert. To kick off our due diligence, we looked at the history of the agreement that governs the relationship surrounding the Saline Rec Center. In 1990, the city entered into agreement with Pittsfield Township to transfer the property to the city's jurisdiction. That agreement allowed for construction of a rec center, and per that agreement, which is a common misconception, so I want to be clear in this, per that agreement, we established at that time that any future resident discounts associated with the rec center would be extended to Pittsfield Township residents in the Saline Area School District. So that requirement lives with the agreement and is legally binding in that agreement. That land transfer agreement ultimately forms the legal basis for any considerations moving forward. So the first thing that we wanted to look at as a review team was what it would do to pull back on that commitment. And as you can imagine, there would be quite a bit of legal untangling. Certainly there would be the consequences and complexities associated with the termination of that agreement, which I would leave for a formal legal opinion. There would also be early estimates associated with decommissioning the building, somewhere between $12 and $20 million, which would be entirely dependent on a timetable. We have to consider the unknowns at this time. The timetable could be multiple years if there is an easy solution. So there's also the additional concern of blight if there was a long-term vacancy presented in a decision to move away. There's also the loss of services for existing members and visitors. We looked at the total number of visits to the facility and estimated about 150,000 visits annually are made to the rec center by members, day pass purchasers, guests, and those attending special events. Arguably, this is one of the largest attractions, single attractions in our community on any given day of the week. This would also equate to the loss of approximately 27 to 35 full-time equivalent jobs. There's the impact that this could have on the intergovernmental relationships that we have with existing partners, so the schools, again with Pittsfield Township, but also our partners in other surrounding townships who are served now by the facility. This also reflects, frankly, a community asset that would not be easily replaced. There's not a substitute service for what the rec center does. Everything that we've been able to identify in terms of the feasibility study, studies conducted by other municipal jurisdictions or the county have indicated that there's a very dramatic need for this type of facility. There's a severe lack of aquatic centers specifically within the region. And there's the fact that sustaining parks and recreation would ultimately be a responsibility of the general fund in the future. So there is no guarantee that any dollars that would actually be saved on a recurring basis wouldn't end up needing to be repurposed for parks and recreation broadly within the community. And that is evidenced in other communities that we looked at who do not have a recreation complex, but still have budgets or general fund contributions, usually in the range of about $260,000 to $500,000 annually on recreation activities for their community. So in considering, the con list, we also wanted to look at the pro list. Why invest in the Saline Rec Center? Well, as I already mentioned, first, the Aquatic Center would meet one of the largest unmet needs in the county in terms of offering year-round swimming and water activities. The Rec Center is also already well established as an all-ages facilities with a robust focus on programming for families, teens, and seniors. This is something that really sets us apart as a unique entity that serves multi-generational opportunities within the community. Continued investment would actually serve to strengthen our existing partnerships and potential new partnerships, as we will discuss in some slides later on. We also know from the feasibility study that Saline is well positioned to become a regional draw simply based on our location, the scope of currently available services, and the high demand for the types of services offered. What uniquely sets us apart in that regard is that we offer these depths of services at what is considered to be an affordable rate, making Saline one of the more inclusive or affordable recreational opportunities in the region. And we already know that the rec center is an economic boost for the community with the visitors that it draws in on a daily basis and the special events hosted there. We are also one of the largest employers of a youth workforce locally, so there would be a significant impact on continuing that investment. And more importantly, based on both independent third-party review and staff's review, reinvestment positions us for actual return on that investment in a way that continued disinvestment simply does not. Certainly, I think we can all understand that there is no successful business model out there that banks on building something, habitually underinvesting in it, and expecting it to earn more and more money year over year. We have to make an investment if we want to see growth in membership and growth in the opportunities that are available at that facility in the future. What do I mean when I say that Saline is well positioned to be a regional draw? Well, this is a slide from a study conducted by Washtenaw County that looks at unmet recreational needs within the community. Nearly 35,000 participants identified indoor aquatic center as the #1 unmet need locally. This is consistent as well with the county's then list of priority investment rankings, where just after trails, which we know the county has invested heavily in over the years, indoor aquatic center comes next. We believe that this positions Saline for opportunities for partnerships as these are identified locally as high priority investment areas for us and for the county. And really, the county numbers line up quite well with what we found in our own survey. So in our own survey data, again, expanded aquatics and renovated pool space rose to the top in terms of the amenities that draw people in to the facility. And I wanted to recap here as well just what exactly we're talking about in terms of that investment. So the full project cost is $17 to $20 million, but where we see the greatest impact is in that phase one with the aquatic center and improved locker room space at 6.8 to 7.3 million. And that figure does factor in lost cost associated with the project. So it's not just true capital cost, but total cost to the community. Again, just a quick look. We talked about this at our October 2nd meeting, but for the community's benefit, this is what that phase one space would entail. Roughly $5 million expanding and renovating the pool area, and $1.6 million expanding and renovating the locker room spaces, also to add more family locker room spaces or gender-neutral spaces that mixed families could use for the purposes of accessing pool space. We know that that's a very high demand need for the current members of the rec center. And to the public comment that we received, I think it is somewhat difficult to conceptualize in the renderings that we have now just how much more space this presents for the community. 1,200 additional square foot of pool space may look like a smaller portion is now dedicated simply to the open swim area at the center, but realistically, the growth associated with the expansion is more than is needed to meet the needs of our existing base as well as to expand. So that aquatic center renovation includes the expansion. It continues to include a 6-lane lap pool. It would add zero depth entry family pools, renovated locker rooms, and more energy efficient mechanical improvements. And very importantly, what we heard as specific features that were desired by the community in our stakeholder engagement survey, a lazy river, slide, rock wall, all ages activities, indoor activities for young children, families, teens, all ages within one center. So I will turn it over now to Treasurer Cole to discuss the cash needs of that project.
Good evening. Thank you so much, City Manager O'Toole. We've now seen these beautiful renderings of what the rec center could look like, and who wouldn't want to have something like that in our community? It certainly would be a draw for the entire county. My job here is to sit and look at, okay, now that we have these renderings and what we want to do for the rec center, can we afford it? And if we can afford it, how can we accomplish that goal? So I started out by looking at how much cash we would need during just the closure period to make it an acceptable proposition. We figure that it's going to be about 18 months worth of closure. Yeah. Wish 18 minutes. And we use a 70% retainage on revenue and 80% retainage on our expenditures. We came up with those percentages based on a combination of factors of what other rec centers who have done renovations, what their percentages have held at, combined with what our rec center looked at during COVID when people weren't as active. So that's how we determined the percentage that we would keep of revenue and expense. And really over that 18 months, that represents about $175,000 of a shortfall in cash that we would need to cover. One of the ways that we looked at this also is kind of like a worst case scenario. We don't want to sit up here and paint a picture that's all rosy and make it seem like it's going to be very easy to accomplish. So in doing that, we came up with looking at kind of our worst option for funding, which would be the capital improvement bond route. I'm going to go through some different pathways in a minute. And that would generate about $575,000 of a payment that would be due during the very last portion of that 18 months of coverage that we need to look at having available. So the total maximum coverage during the closure period could be up to $250,000. And that's assuming that, sorry, I'm sorry, $750,000, sorry, apologize. All right. So then we want to look at different ways that we can accomplish funding this renovation. We looked at capital improvement bonds, which we just talked about. Right now, that is about 5% interest rate. That would generate that $575,000 payment in a year, and that would be based on 20 years of payments. We would need about a 45-day notice in order to issue those bonds. Another type of capital pathway we could go down is a revenue bond. So revenue bonds are bonds, payments based on the amount of revenue that you make. Considering the amount of revenue that goes into the rec center at this point in time, we would only be able to fund a portion of the project this way, but it certainly could be a useful tool in our toolkit to make this happen. The other option we had talked about is county-issued bonds. The county is very fortunate to have an outstanding credit rating of a AAA. If they were able to bond for us, if we were able to work with them in order to make that happen, we would enjoy a much lower interest rate on those monies that we borrowed. And the last option that we talked about is a dedicated millage. One mill is about $500,000 a year, certainly would need to go to a vote. Challenges a little bit are with the sequencing, the time frame that we'd be able to get it out for a decision on a millage is a little bit later than what we need to know if we want to start the project. We would also make sure that the millage is structured so that it's for not just the recreation center, but the surrounding parks around it. And we would be recommending that 1 mil. So I talked a little bit about the millage, and the last option that we have really is for some of our partnership opportunities. So this represents another way that we could fund some of the shortfalls in the rec center and also for the debt service. We certainly have a wonderful community around here. We have surrounding communities that enjoy having their residents be a member. So we certainly could be approaching them and talking to them about contributing, kind of matching some of the benefit that they get with some form of monetary assistance, whether it's just annual or it's a one-time gift. We did look at some alternate pricing structures. We just talked about the millage. And then there's fundraising. So there are a lot of options, and kind of we have endless possibility when it comes to fundraising, whether it's crowdfunding, a fun casino night, doing the roundup. You know, some businesses have where if you go in, you buy something for 79 cents, you round up to the nearest dollar. So there are some options like that. And we've been so blessed and lucky to receive a lot of donations towards the rec center, and we would hope that those would continue to grow. External funding strategies, direct appropriations, which we're all familiar with our wastewater treatment plant renovation. There are a lot of monies being dedicated to really invest in recreation and parks in our communities. And we think that our recreation center is very special and unique and has a lot of opportunity to serve the people in Washtenaw County. And we think our chances of, being able to attain some of these direct appropriations for the recreation center are very high. We also have lots of grants that we can be looking at for growth in a renovation like this. The Passport Grant, Spark Grant, Land and Water Conservation Fund has some things available, DNR, and lots of county grants. So we have a lot of options, and I think, when we sit back and look at, can we do it? The answer is yes, we can do it. We can make this work. If this is the direction that council wants to go in, we certainly have a lot of tools in our toolkit to make this happen and make it affordable for the city. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you, Treasurer Cole. I appreciate that. So I'm going to now touch on, I know one of the conversations we had at the last work session was what are we currently doing to invest in the rec center and to generate revenue and to make sure that our budget is healthy. So I want to touch on a couple areas and some of the initiatives that we've been taking to generate revenue and meet those goals. And I really look at it into 3 different areas. One is our membership growth, and I'd like to mention that memberships really are our backbone of our operations. When we look at both our memberships and day passes sold, that accounts for about 45% of our revenues for the Parks and Rec Department. Next in line is our successful programs. That accounts for about 32% of revenue. And then as Treasurer Cole was speaking about grants, there's lots of opportunities, and we've certainly do our best to take advantage and to seek out those grants that are available. So let's dive into, we're going to talk a little bit about overall funding for municipally owned recreation centers. And I have to say that Saline Parks and Recreation, the Saline Rec Center, really stands out amongst our peers. When we take a look at cost recovery, we have about a 75% cost recovery. Compared to similar facilities in our state, in Michigan, those are ranging anywhere from 22 to close to 50% cost recovery. So again, we really stand out amongst them. When we look at a national level, the national numbers are about 25%. So that's looking at user fees supporting those, those endeavors. Parks and Recreation departments in general rely on contributions from general fund resources, and Saline should be no different. So let's dive into our membership. So as I mentioned, that is the backbone of our finances. And some of the initiatives that our staff have been taking taking on are an increased marketing of our memberships. So we've been identifying different promotions. So we have one coming up this December, so December 1st through the 10th. We're trying to capture people before the new year and get people excited. I know we've seen an increase in usage, which we usually do this time of year as the weather gets cold. So we'll have a promotion taking place then. We're also identifying, our current members, and really membership retention is key. So we're encouraging members to, renew early to keep those memberships going year round. As well as just identifying different opportunities through our special event programs, our birthday party programs, people who come into our facility who maybe aren't traditionally members, and making sure that we're making contact with them. We'd like to see them come through the doors more often. Some other things that we feel are important is that we are out in the community, being engaged, that we are seen. So our staff has been making their way out to all of our school open houses this fall. We were at the senior center for their health fair. We've been downtown at the farmers market. We take any advantage that we can be at a community event so we can participate and be seen. I work closely with our PR generalist, Massey. She's very talented, and we're using her to up our social media marketing. In addition to that, we will be unveiling a rec center promotional video in the next couple weeks. So again, we're really trying to push the word. We want the community to know that we're here. So when they're thinking about health and wellness, they know exactly where to go. One of my goals is to work toward all of this new housing. We see a lot of new developments taking place in the surrounding areas, so we want to get in with those new families and get them coming over to the rec center. We're right around the corner from so many of these developments, and we feel like there's a good market that we can tap into. And then finally, I feel that the word of mouth is so powerful, and the words that we use are very powerful. So we are identifying our ambassadors, and that's everywhere from our rec center staff, city staff, elected officials, and our customers. You'd be surprised at how many people come up to me and tell me how much they value what we're doing, and I ask them to spread the word, to let people know that we are the Center for Health and Wellness in Saline. So we are building up our ambassador base. When we look at promoting our memberships, why get a membership? What are our talking points? And we went through, the staff and I evaluated what we have to offer and came up with some additional perks to becoming a member. One of them will be unveiled with our new brochure coming out in just a few weeks in early December, and it's priority registration. So all of our rec center members will have priority registration for any of the programs taking place within the rec center. We know that there's a lot of our programs that are in high demand, especially our camps and our swim lessons, even our tennis lessons, so on and so forth. And so we want to make sure our members get first shot at getting registered. We have always offered discounts for members on our programs, but we identified, for example, that our birthday parties, we just had a set rate, and so we're going to offer some member discounts with birthday party packages. Those have really just exploded in the past, I'd say, 2 years. Member-only nights, those will be coming up once a month, so it's a great perk as a member to be able to come out on a Saturday night. Our building closes at 6 o'clock typically on Saturdays, but this will extend it from 6 to 8 so that families can come for an evening swim. You could use the fitness equipment. We'll bring out our bounce house, just have some special perks for our members only. And then, of course, we always offer free fitness classes, free childcare, lap swim, open swim, all the gym equipment, the gymnasium, our weight rooms, so on and so forth. So there's so many amenities, and there's so many reasons why you should become a member.
No, I got you.
Oh, you got it. Okay, thank you. So we talked about our memberships, but also our programs. They are a significant draw for our community, and it's something that in the past several years has really helped carry us. Program registration has been consistently strong. And when we talk about programs, we're talking about kids camps, learn to swim programs, tennis lessons, water aerobics, pickleball, birthday parties, martial arts, personal training. There's so many, I could kind of go on and on. But just to give, I think, everybody an idea of what we do to do our due diligence, every fall as we prepare for budget season, our staff does a thorough cost-benefit analysis of the program. So we take a look, and I have an example on the right of the slide. I just pulled our basketball league, and that example shows that we look at our revenues and expenditures for previous years, our current years. We take a look at what the trends are, and from there, we anticipate and set goals for that upcoming fiscal year. When we see programs that have not been successful, we go ahead and we remove them from our portfolio and make room for new ones that have potential. So we do a lot of planning. It's not that we just throw these out there and hope for the best. We really put a lot of thought into the background of what we offer and why we offer it. As we look at those needs, we are evaluating, what the needs of the community are, who our service group is, the demographics. But one thing I have to point out that is key is our staffing. So without the right staff, qualified staff, a healthy roster of staff, without that, we can't have these programs. So investing in our part-time staff is crucial to our successful programs. And then finally, one of the areas we want to continue to grow is sponsorships. There's opportunities there to work with local organizations and businesses to get them to sponsor and to partner up with us. So, that's an area we just unveiled this past summer, a new sponsorship package. So if anybody's looking to get their name out there, please send them my way. Whether it's for an event, a program, a league, we have lots of opportunities there. Okay, and then finally, I want to touch a little bit about our successes with grant funding. So in just the recent, probably year and a half or so, we have secured $1.15 million in grant funding. Okay, so that's been with our city staff going toward parks and recreation initiatives. Of significance is the Saline River Valley Trail project, and that project We'll be connecting the north end of Mill Pond Park with a non-motorized pathway all the way down to Michigan Ave. It's accessible. It really increases the ability for our public to get into the park and utilize the park. So that's a wonderful parks project with significant funding that we've secured. Other projects, over $100,000 in various projects that take place not only with the rec center, but within our parks as well. So everything from, and I'll touch first on rec center. We've received, actually our funding, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more for replacement cardio equipment. We have aging equipment that we had identified needed replacement several years ago. We've been able to kind of, keep it going with outstanding maintenance, but the time has come and we were able, instead of putting the onus on our current budget, to get grant funding and donations for replacement equipment. In addition, our LunaSafe in our aquatic center, which is a safety device, so that if our lifeguard has to jump in the pool, it sounds an alarm. The system that we have is quite archaic. There's no replaceable parts, so we had to purchase a new system, so that was all funded through grant funding, as well as some upgrades in our kids camp security software that we use, so that's another grant we had. And then out in the parks, everything from play structures to soccer goals to park signage, those have all been funded by grants.
So some key takeaways that we hope you will have from this presentation. One, the rec center is already a city asset. We know what disinvestment has meant for other city assets, and frankly, failing to act when the time is right in the past has cost us more over time. It has an impact on the quality of life for residents and to the city's reputation as a whole. Two, the rec center is incredibly efficient at what it does. It is one of, if not among the most successful municipally operated rec centers in the state of Michigan, simply because of how much cost coverage it is able to take on through membership and program fees alone. The rec center yet still remains highly affordable to residents, and this is a huge value in a community where sometimes it can feel like people are being priced out. That affordability aspect in terms of being able to access health and wellness amenities like a recreation facility is what can continue to make our community feel more inclusive. We know that we're meeting a high demand need of our community and the county as a whole, and continued investment by every indicator will make us well positioned for future growth and return on that investment. The Saline Rec Center is currently a destination for health and wellness for all ages, and again, continued investment provides us the opportunity to extend that service well into the future. Ultimately, the Rec Center is viewed as a community center at its core. The staff, the faculty, the programming, it's all designed to be more than just a number on a cost-benefit sheet. What we do has a significant impact on the lives of people served by the Rec Center. And ultimately, we're a public service agency. So asking this facility to meet a basically private sector standard by being a revenue generating asset is very challenging, and yet they still come incredibly close to doing it, and frankly can do it based on the success that they have had in the past with generating revenue pre-COVID. Recreation is not any different, certainly not in this day and age, in terms of meeting a community need and being seen as a community asset. And we feel, as a review group and staff, that this is a core municipal service at its core. So we're asking those to be the talking points into the future, and as Director Lambert mentioned, that all of you will consider being rec center ambassadors and spreading that message as we move forward. Specifically, in terms of next steps, what we'd love to get consensus on, or certainly not consensus, but some ideas generating. So consensus around staff efforts on partnership opportunities to seek with the township and county. I would hope that there's no specific objections to that. A consensus around direct appropriation requests, asking and lobbying for state and federal support. General willingness to invest in the next step of us reviewing this project, which would be identifying design partners. And then consensus to identify which capital stack pathways we want to dive into deeper. In all likelihood, it would be some combination of all the things that Treasurer Cole mentioned, but there is always the question back and forth, do we consider just general obligation debt or a millage? And that is something we should start having a more serious conversation around. And finally, just again, stressing that positive messaging and letting the community know that recreation is a service that we value, and that staff is committed to finding a way to continue to offer that service to the community. So we'd love to get council's ideas on how we can help support that mission.
Very good. You threw a lot at us tonight. That was very thorough. Thank you. Thank you, City Manager, City Treasurer, and the Parks and Rec Director for your comments this evening. That was very helpful. Can you go back to the previous slide for just a moment?
This one?
So obviously on most of the points that are enumerated on the screen, we're not going to be able to develop consensus this evening. However, I suspect there's broad consensus already on points 1 and 3 to seek consensus and develop external partnerships. We've already broached this subject with the county, talked about doing that with some of our regional neighbors, the most adjacent townships and municipalities. And then, of course, 3, we've all at this dais already co-signed a letter to our county commissioner, our state representative, our state senator, our congresswoman, our 2 United States senators, seeking grant support or a direct appropriation to support not only the rec center, but parks and recreation more broadly. As it relates to the other items that are enumerated on the screen, again, I don't believe that we'll get to those tonight. We'll probably have time for one round of questions. So what I would suggest, City Manager, in keeping with the conversation that we had immediately prior to tonight's meeting, I'd like to keep the momentum going on this topic and have this as the item for discussion at the next council work meeting, which I believe would be on December the 4th. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. So this evening for questions, we'll start to my left and end to my right. And again, you'll each have 5 minutes. I'm going to need to keep you to a tight 5 minutes in order to get comments from all 6 of us at the dais. So I will begin with Councilmember Rice. You have 5 minutes, questions or comments for the City Manager, Treasurer, Parks and Rec Director, or the community more broadly.
A couple things. We have heard a lot about aquatics. 2 questions about aquatics. One, you mentioned that you have investigated I don't remember exactly the word that you used, but sort of like a packaged, like membership fee. Is that what you were referencing earlier when you, let me find what slide it was on. Because we've brought this up in the past, like, should there be different membership fees based off of use? What did we call that? I apologize.
No, that's okay. I mean, I can answer the question more broadly of, should there be different memberships based on use? Certainly that idea has been considered in the past. I think it would be something we would want to reevaluate if and when we came to the time of actually investing in the aquatic center, because obviously that's going to be a significant draw, and in all likelihood, we'll see a significant uptick in family memberships and day passes as a result. And that's really where Barry Dunn drew their numbers from in anticipating that need.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would definitely like to see some sort of a breakdown on how we could achieve that. Secondly, related to aquatics, has anyone explored the idea of calling it the Saline Aquatics and Recreation Center?
If you guys support the project, we can call it whatever you want.
I think the point that I'm trying to
The Rice Rec Center.
put my name on it. The point that I'm trying to make here is if we're going to focus so much on aquatics, let's focus on aquatics.
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, everything that we are seeing, every indicator that is what our competitive advantage is. Regionally, we have the opportunity to become a draw for families, for individuals of all ages, because of what we offer at that aquatic center, especially if we can double down on the investment and have those amenities like zero depth entry, splash pads, slides, things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. One question that I had, you had noted the amount of funding that Dexter recently received.
Yeah, 8.5 million for its recreation project.
That was
Yeah.
all grants?
So,
That was a direct appropriation. Yeah.
okay, so that was tied to senior citizen programs, you said? I think the comments that we heard from our community tonight sort of help support that foci as well. This is, you know, the only aquatic center in the region where activities such as aerobics and things like that, and, you know, rehabilitation programs, things like that. We've talked about that before too, teaming up with perhaps a rehab service to do, you know, client rehabilitation, things like that. I would definitely like to investigate that a little bit further. Do you have, I know that in the survey, it was, you know, what people want to see. Do you have the list of what people use most? Is that deep within that survey somewhere? If it was, I can look it up on my own.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see if there's, I think the survey really focused on what the needs are and what the interests are, more so, yeah.
So I'd be curious, again, with that breakdown, and like if folks just wanted to use the aquatic services and not all of the upstairs or the gym or anything like that, if that'd be something that the community would be interested in. I think that's really my only thought for right now. I appreciate having this information in front of me. I think there's some finite details that we need to dig into in addition to some of this information. I would like to see definitely staff time and maybe even looking at getting a contract with someone to try to fight for some of these grants and fight for some of this money. I would be willing to support that. I know that working towards getting grants takes a lot of time and effort, and it might be one of those things that's worth a little bit, the return on investment would be worth a little bit to have someone dedicated to that over the next, 6 months or so. That's all.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Delorco, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to unpack one of the slides a little bit further about how we compare to some of the surrounding municipalities. Because this was a real eye-opener for me. I didn't realize that our rec center is subsidizing itself 75%. And when it talks about the gaps being filled by taxes and municipal contributions, I want to understand what that actually means for those other municipalities, because those services are certainly valued in Saline as they are in these other communities. And if it's the idea that they're leveraging a millage or some other type of direct appropriation grants, whatever they're using, we need to figure out how to get our model more closely aligned with what these other municipalities are doing. Is there any?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there is data on that. We can pull it. It was something that the rec task force looked at when we were doing tours of other facilities. We can dust that off and share it with council again. But you're exactly right. The gap financing in these cases typically came from either a millage or some dedicated portion of the general fund being contributed annually to subsidize. And then in a few cases, there were like donations or endowments
Like
that.
philanthropy of
Yes,
sorts?
yeah.
Okay. Wealthy family donors, in
Exactly.
other words. Okay. When I think about my experience growing up in Canton Township, which is clearly on this list, and a very successful model of what a rock star rec center looks like, in my estimation. They have a beautiful lazy river facility. It's packed with kids all the time, and their memberships are still in the what I consider affordable range. It's not like they're gouging people to get their members to come. What attracts people to the facility is the size and quality and the maintenance and everything that it has to offer. And if we're not doing something, I understand also that they have a much larger population density and a much broader tax base. So my question about how to fund this keeps coming back to how we can get away from utilizing the general fund to subsidize the activities at the rec center. I think my council colleagues would agree that we're willing to contribute some to that finance and subsidize that operation, but it's no longer sustainable to do what we have been doing in the status quo. When we talk about millages, are we allowed to leverage a millage that would account for the entire district, like the schools do? So everybody that uses the rec center is paying into it? Or are we only allowed to leverage a millage that would factor into the city proper?
So it would depend on how future partnerships are established. If the city was able to, say, identify a partner to enter into an authority with, then we could expand the district upon which a millage was levied. If that is not the case, then the only authority we have would be to levy a millage for the city of Saline. There's also the alternative of trying to partner with the schools through their CARES millage.
Yeah, so that's a lot to think about and understand, because I don't think it's equitable to expect the city of Saline taxpayer to subsidize these amenities for everyone that uses them. I think everyone should be paying into some way or somehow. And if the partnership is the way to go, then obviously that was one of the first items on the slide was
Yes,
look into
that's
those
exactly why it
partnerships.
was kind of our number one top takeaway. We believe the most appropriate next step is basically for the staff you see sitting here to go on a little bit of a tour and talk with those surrounding townships about what the relationship might mean for them and their residents.
Yeah, so just at a glance, because I'm almost out of time, I'm obviously in favor of number one. Let's double down and go after that voraciously. I obviously support direct appropriations and grant requests, because who wouldn't? The issue there is who's going to write those grants, and do we have the staff and manpower to do that? If not, do we need to think about bringing in professional consultants? To see that Dexter got $8 million on a direct appropriation is encouraging, but I don't know if we're in a similar position with the senior center stuff that was tied to that, or if we could model ourselves in a way that's similar.
Sorry, Mr. Dillard, I got to stop you there.
Okay.
I appreciate those comments. They were good. Councilmember Gearbaugh, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. For me, the questions still go around the issue of operational loss. We can put as much money as we want into this, but again, it's going to require millage. There's no way that we can cut costs or any of that thing. There needs to be higher and greater subsidy, correct?
Yeah, at this point, we believe that staff has identified the most cost-effective and efficient way to operate the facility, as evidenced from how far it stands out from its peers in terms of meeting that gap. What I will say is today it's 75%. Pre-COVID, it was getting to about 90% or above. So historically, that gap has looked more like $200,000 to $250,000 annually.
And then we moved towards moving some salaries and things off of it that were like,
Yeah, I guess.
considered more overall rec versus this rec.
Versus parks, yes. Because we've historically put all parks and recreation into the rec complex fund, one of the recommendations of the rec center feasibility group, was that the parks portion of those salaries actually be paid from general fund, because as we know, that would have to be paid out of general fund regardless. So you could look at it either way. Either pre that decision, the rec complex fund was kind of subsidizing park salaries, and then post that decision, it was more evenly balanced.
And what I remember from doing that was we were hoping that was going to help plug the gap, and the gap continues to grow and grow.
Well, the gap is a lagging indicator post-COVID. So obviously during COVID, when the center had to be shut down, the facility ate through its reserves, and in the 2 years subsequent to that, we've had to significantly subsidize operations through general fund. What we can see, though, is we're back on track to head towards that more normalized appropriation that we have in the past. So this year, I believe, we're just under 350,000, about 326 or something.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And so any assumption building the new, if you were to expand this, all those incremental costs and everything had been adjusted to consider against any additional revenue that comes in? I know you showed 280,000 K, but that's just revenue. I don't know what the operational cost would be of a new.
That would be net.
That was net?
That was net.
Okay. I have other questions, but I know we're trying not to ask questions during the meeting unless we've asked them prior. My one concern with.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop your time. No, for work meetings or
Yeah.
discussion items, ask all the questions you'd like.
Okay.
If it's an enumerated action item, yes, I'd like to hold us to that standard of trying to answer them in advance. But if you have questions that have come up during the course of this conversation, please ask them.
Okay, and then one of the questions is, where we identified 150,000 visitors, does that include the rec center only, or are we talking the entire Tuff Park?
That's just the rec center.
Okay. For me, when we look at these items here, no problem with consensus on outside partnerships, because I think that's what we have to do. But I also think we need to do a millage, and we need to do it yesterday. I think March is a scheduled time, but we have an election coming up. That potentially could be done with it. I'd like to know, because we have to fill this. Even if we go for debt service, that's $500,000 that would come in that has to be going to new projects. We're $250,000 short, or that's what we're going to be. We're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole if we do go proceed with this project forward. There's so many things that either that millage money comes in, or you're going to need to identify the top projects that we need to forego for the rest of the city, because we have no funds to provide for that. And I need to be able to answer why we're not doing that to the community.
Absolutely. And again, I will state, I think Treasurer Cole and I are fairly conservative when it comes to finances. So we presented the worst-case scenario in terms of what the financial impact of a capital stack that included just debt would look like. So if additional appropriations or grants are brought in, partnerships are identified, that number goes down significantly. I mean, even just taking $1 million off the project is going to take probably $50,000 to $75,000 off the annual debt service.
So it's a similar condition like we had with the wastewater treatment plant.
Exactly.
But, and that's my concern right now, is that we need to take action now. We can't continue to wait until the future.
Allow me to clarify, Clerk Royal, do you know what the deadline is for getting the millage language in? I think it's pretty quickly approaching here. I don't. Okay, that's fine, we can follow up with that.
Maybe you could include that in your weekly
Yes.
communicated council.
The only reason I'm saying that is because we have our amendment happening at that time for our charter amendments. That would be a great time to line that up with an existing election without having to do a special election.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
That's
sorry,
Thank you.
perfect, I got to move on. It was exactly 5 minutes. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. We've only got 4 minutes left on the clock, so.
We're going to give you 5 and Mr. CEO another 5. So if you want to exercise brevity, great, but if you want to take up the whole 5, that's fine as well.
So thank you. I do have a couple of questions. I want to kind of first touch base on did you know, the 150,000 visitors that came in. What did we do to capture those people? And did we realize memberships from any of those people?
That does include member visits. And yes, so what we are now trying to do, if we want to go back to the member slide, but there we go. The new effort really is around trying to convert visitors into members. So the people that come for what we've identified is that the people that come for special events, birthday parties, aren't necessarily members of the facility. So structuring new membership benefits to capitalize on that, doing follow-up touch points with those individuals to try and convert visitors, guests into permanent members.
And I appreciate that. I'd like to probably see some benchmarks of what we would anticipate in timeframes, because, I mean, to be honest, this is something we've talked about year after year after year, increased membership. And I'd like to sort of see where we are with that and set some goals, some realistic goals. So I've got some big questions, which are, when we start talking about rehabbing the rec center, and we're talking about, you know, what are we talking about? Let's see what his full number is. I'm sorry. 17 to $20 million. That's a huge amount of money. And so is there a better benefit to starting over than rehabbing an old building and building what you want? What would that cost look like?
We could certainly get some figures around that, But I would say just anecdotally with what we've been dealing with in terms of capital projects, I would conservatively estimate probably 3 times that figure.
Yeah, at least.
Okay. So, but it's something that, you know, and I also would like to understand the timing of this. I know Mr. Gearbaugh just indicated, you know, let's move for a millage. I'm just going to put this out there because I'm going to run out of time any minute now, is that we've now had 2 work sessions on this, 2 one-hour meetings. I do not feel like this is sufficient by any means. We're very tight on our time for asking questions. I feel like there's still more presentation to be done. I feel like this needs to be its own meeting without having a meeting after it, so that we do have expanded time to talk about this. This is a huge financial commitment for our city, and it's going to leave a legacy of debt for our residents, and we need to understand exactly what we are doing. And I don't want to rush into it, and as we're talking about, well, are we ready to move on to this step or that step? I don't feel like we are. We did do our ask for some appropriations and some grants. That's always out there. We don't even have money right now to match grants established. So, I mean, I just feel like there's so many pieces of the puzzle that have not come together yet that I really want to make sure that we're looking at this holistically. The other big thing is that we're talking about aquatics. I really want to make sure that, are we looking at all of the mega hotels that are coming to Ann Arbor and whether they are going to have indoor water facilities at them? I want to make sure that, you know, those are day spots too, that people could be going to, and understanding what that's going to look like. And the other thing I want to end with is that when we start looking at this, and I appreciate that we're focusing on aquatics, but ironically, the first thing that was the most important to people is trails. And I feel like we're ignoring that in our community right now. We've sort of put our sidewalk programs on, you know, on hold, and some other connectivity issues of, yeah, well, when the right grant comes along. Well, that's one of the things that people are asking for, but yet we're not pursuing that. So I want to make sure that we're really looking holistically at the needs of the community and of the county, you know, as a whole.
So again, the number 1 unmet need is indoor aquatic center. You are correct. Trails is right up there with it. And obviously, we're very pleased that the county and regional partners have invested so much in terms of trail systems regionally, and we are a recent recipient of grant dollars for that. But I agree with you. I mean, nothing in this presentation is intended to take away from our vision for a broader trail system within the community. In fact, I'd be happy to share with council nearly $13 million in appropriations requests we made to Watts as part of their long-range plan, specifically for expanded trail systems locally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dillon. Mr. Steele, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. In terms of next steps, I wholeheartedly agree with my council colleagues. I think we need to begin to seek outside partnerships. It looks to me like under number 2, I know with the radio system, what we did was we finally decided to seek a millage to support the radio system. Once we accepted that challenge and took that on head first and spent the time and effort to explain to people what they could accomplish with that millage, we had overwhelming support in support of the millage. So I think that that's a very possible way to go forward with this. I was here when the rec center first became an idea in the community, and I remember the palpable excitement that was encouraged, that came about from everybody talking about it, people getting behind it, the leaders in the community talking it up to the rest of the community, and how much support there was for the beginnings of this rec center. I think the rec center now is an integral part of the fabric of this community. And I think that it's necessary that we keep it. And I think that we need to explore, like Councilperson Dillon says, in a more thorough fashion, through an extended meeting perhaps, or 2, how we can go about this, and maybe get some more folks in here with some other ideas to try and encourage some more community ideas along this line. And then also to engage in the positive messaging that's called forth here and number 5. And with that, Your Honor, that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sia. I'll refrain from making comments or questions at this time since we're already past our deadline here. We'll reconvene into regular session in just a moment. But to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon's comment and then to Mr. Sio's, there does seem to be some merit and some desire to have a meeting on a date in which we had more time. We weren't limited to an hour and then had to transition into our regular council meeting. And I'm also keenly aware that we need to address via a work meeting our asset management program specifically for road projects, which is scheduled for early December. So I'm curious as to this group's schedule. We have a work meeting scheduled for the 4th to discuss infrastructure. Would it be possible for council or staff to revisit this issue at a special council meeting on December the 11th?
I'm amenable to that.
I'm available.
Okay, that's a Monday. It's the second Monday of the month. Clerk Royal, is there anything on the city calendar that conflicts? It doesn't appear to me that there would be any conflicts. Okay, let me start again to my left. So, Councilmember Rice, that would work for you? Yes. Councilmember Delorco?
Yes.
Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Yes.
It works for me. Councilmember Dillon?
Yes.
Councilmember Sio?
Yes.
Okay, it looks like we have consensus. 6 o'clock?
That works. Just so I'm clear, are we can have the answers to all the questions from this evening prepared for that meeting or in advance of that meeting, but is there anything else within this presentation that council members wish us to see expand on, or would we simply be basing that conversation off what we discussed today and continuing it?
The only thing that sticks out to me, and I'm sure your hypothesis is correct, but to Councilmember Dillon's point, it would be interesting to know what would be the estimated cost if we were to essentially start over.
Okay.
But I would lean on my colleagues here. In the interim 2 weeks, if you do have additional questions or data points that you'd like to see as part of that presentation, please direct those to City Manager O'Toole at your earliest convenience. Councilmember Delorco, did you have one final thought or question before we wrap up?
I can send it in writing, that's
Okay,
fine.
very good. Mr. Gearbaugh?
When we talk about these consensus, I've known there's some discussions that we talked about potential partnerships or things that we could do. We could have those highlighted, like things with the county, the schools, all of those specifically
Sure.
identified.
Specifically what.
And actually, by the time we meet on the 11th,
The
we might.
authority, all those different things.
Yeah, the
By the time we meet on
partnership.
the 11th, we might have consensus from the county in terms of their initial level of support towards our rec center, and we could certainly report out on that and how that would impact the bottom line and future contributions from the general fund. Okay, so we'll stick with a work meeting for 6 p.m. on the 4th to discuss asset management.
The 11th.
No. It's going to be, the 4th will be asset management at 6, and then a special meeting on the 11th exclusive to the rec center feasibility and the future of our municipally owned recreation complex. If there's nothing further, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn this work meeting at 7:07.
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. You have 2 minutes to use the restroom, and then we'll reconvene into regular session.
You're all set.
Are you mayor?
I'm good, Zach. How about yourself?
My mom talked to you about this mayor for the.
No, I was waiting for you
That
to.
you talked about.
It was great.
No, I don't think. My apologies for the delay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, members present this evening are Councilmembers CO, Del Orco, Gearbaugh, Rice, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Morrow. From city staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Community Development Director Harrington, and Parks and Rec Director Lambert. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, we welcome you. You can, if you'd like, there's copies of the agenda on the back table. We also encourage you to sign in, and there's also hearing devices as well. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted or amended.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. All those in favor of approving as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to excuse the absence of our council colleague, Mr. Kamir Sulak?
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by CO. All those in favor of excusing the absence, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We come now to public comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. And again, this comment period will be limited to agenda items. Are there any citizen comments? The record reflect there are none from the audience. Clerk Royal, did we receive any written comments? We did not. Then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to a public hearing. This is regarding the potential annexation of 865 North Ann Arbor Street. First motion will be a motion to open the public hearing at 7:13, affording the public an opportunity to speak to this issue.
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, I'll let CO be the second on that. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the potential annexation of 865 North Ann Arbor Street?
Your Honor, members of council, I'm Kurt Schmerberg. I am the brother of the petitioner, Leishan Escott, of the property at 865 North Ann Arbor Street. Just to report to you that the Lodi Township had their public hearing on Thursday and agreed unanimously to reach or to enter into negotiations with the city on the 425 agreement. Other than that, I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmerberg. Appreciate your attendance this evening. Are there any additional citizen comments pertaining to the potential annexation of 865 North Ann Arbor Street?
Seeing none, I move to close.
Moved by Gearbaugh to close the public hearing at 7:15. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Del Orco. All those in favor of closing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. The final motion will be a motion to simply acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Manager O'Toole describing certain findings for reasonableness of the request under PA 425, sections 124.23.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to make a brief obligatory comment regarding this matter?
Certainly. So the public hearing is the first in the regulatory process that is going through a mutually cooperative 425 or land transfer agreement with the township. As you've heard, the township already hosted their public hearing, so now a 30-day referendum period is open from the close of our public hearing until a time that we can actually consider a 425. I do not have a formal draft agreement for council's consideration yet, but I anticipate largely the terms will mirror those executed in the past with likely some changes to the timeframes.
So we would be considering a potential 425 agreement, considering the 30-day window after the first of the year? No, actually,
No.
our second
meeting in
second
December.
meeting in December, excuse me, okay. And just for council's clarification and for the public's edification, this process is running concurrent to the petitioner's request to the State Boundary Commission to approve the transfer.
Correct. And the understanding is that whichever process moves most quickly is what is most beneficial for the petitioner.
Very good, okay. Are there questions for the city manager? No questions? Okay. Any discussion or debate on the motion? There is none. It's moved by Gearbox, seconded by Dillon, simply to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you again for being here. We move on to unfinished business, agenda item 23-232, ordinance number 862, prohibition of overnight parking of recreational vehicles on public streets. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Community Development Director Harrington, and to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 862, an ordinance prohibiting the overnight parking of recreational vehicles on public streets.
Move to acknowledge and adopt.
Moved by Gearbox to acknowledge and to adopt. Is that a second by CO?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Mr. Harrington, we addressed this matter 2 weeks ago, but if you'd like to make some additional comments, we would welcome that.
Absolutely. Nothing has changed since that first reading. So it's a prohibition of parking recreational vehicles on city-owned streets from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Recreational vehicles would be things like boats, RVs, four-wheelers, et cetera, regardless of whether they're attached to a vehicle or in a trailer independently. It would be prohibited to park them between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., following our typical civil infraction fees. So starting at $25 to $50, escalating to up to $200 for a third-time offender. Police department would be the enforcing body for this ordinance. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Harrington? I'll start with Mr. CO and then transition to Councilmember Dillon, or Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Just a comment, Your Honor.
Yes.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Harrington, for bringing this forward in the form in which it is. I think it's simply a recodification of what was the former intent of council, or the former council, when they passed the original ordinance that said that they could not be stored on the street. This tightens it down to make it absolutely certain that they even shouldn't be there during those hours. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would just add that this is already a zoning ordinance, but per the rules of zoning ordinances, which regulate private property versus a traditional ordinance which would regulate our property, that's why this has to be rewritten essentially and moved to a different section of our code.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. As Mr. CO said, thank you very much for making swift work of this. I know this was actually an issue for us. My only question for you is, what does this process look like? I would like the public to understand what this is going to mean. Are we giving warnings? Is it that we find it, you're ticketed, move the vehicle, understanding, so that they have an understanding of what it's going to look like?
I would say for the foreseeable future, especially because it's the winter where these vehicles are less likely to be on the streets in the first place or just less likely to be out, we'll definitely start with warning processes for folks. And we'll probably start next summer as well, where we have the boats and the RVs and the campers, et cetera, come out with warnings. I then think, probably looking a year from now, we're going to be escalating for sure to tickets. But if there are repeat offenders next summer that have been given warnings, it's essentially a traffic ticket. So that's how that process would follow.
And then who is going to, since it will be a traffic ticket, will it be our police that are doing this? Is it code enforcement?
It will be police. So code enforcement can actually enforce this section of our code. So, but that's kind of the whole point. If it's on the street, the police should be the party that's enforcing it.
Okay. And then, so we're going strictly by the time frame. So you can park on the street as long as it's not between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. So then are we looking at the people are going to move them off and then move them back? I mean, I want to make sure that we've sort of covered our bases on this and that there isn't some sort of loophole that we're going, oh, I wish we would have thought this through a little bit more.
Right. So I would say, we can always change it if we find this to be a wholly ineffective way of regulating it. But after other considerations of how to regulate it, time limits, specific areas of the city, et cetera, this definitely makes the most sense. And it doesn't seem to be the council or the public's wish to outright ban the parking of these vehicles on the street, especially for short periods of time. I'm just getting the boat ready to go out to the lake, things like that. So I think out of all the ways to regulate this phenomenon of people leaving their recreational vehicles on the street, this is definitely the most effective and most assured way to achieve compliance and effectively make it incredibly inconvenient for somebody looking to permanently store their vehicle on the street.
I appreciate that, because that is the piece of it that I want to make sure that we are not, there are people that do keep their vehicles, boats, campers, whatever, in storage and will bring it back to their property, and i.e. the street, if you live on a very slopey street like mine and cannot park in your driveway, those people will park on the street because they're leaving early in the morning or get home late at night or something like that. And I don't want to penalize those people that are just doing a quick, park. But at the same time, I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what the rules are so that no one's surprised by the outcomes.
Right. I think talking to Chief Radzik about this specifically, the intent is to be understanding, to lead with compassion, to consider the totality of the circumstances. If this is something that's happening every night, which is unfortunately the case that we have with some property owners in the city, that's a different story. But again, to your point, if it's someone who's bringing it out overnight, who's managing a bunch of kids, who has trying to get everyone ready for the lake the next day, it's not really going to affect them. They're going to get warnings. We're going to lead with compassion in an attempt to educate people prior to ticketing. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gearbaugh.
And just clarification, if someone parks their trailer now in front of their home, then that becomes a code enforcement issue? In their parking, in their driveway, in their home?
Yes, so our code does not allow for the parking of recreational vehicles in the front driveway. That is correct.
So just to clarify, that 11 to 4 doesn't mean you can put it into your front yard and leave it there during the daytime?
That is correct. So the goal is to store it on the side or rear of your property or elsewhere off-site. Again, it's meant for the totality, the aesthetic of the city, as well as numerous other things of why it can't be on the street. So.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by CO, to acknowledge receipt of the memo and to adopt ordinance number 862. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We move on to new business item 23-238, resolution to adopt 2024 rec center fees. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Director Lambert and to adopt or not to adopt resolution number 2023-238 for 2024 rec center membership fees.
Move to acknowledge and adopt.
Moved by CO to acknowledge and to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Director Lambert.
We looked at our current membership fees as well as the current economic climate. And January 1st of 2023, we did see a 6% increase in membership rates. And so looking forward to January 1st of 2024, we would like to, again, make adjustments to our rec center memberships. And as I spoke at the work session, our memberships are the backbone of our operations, and that it is essential that we review those rates to make sure that we're keeping up with current financial trends. Some of the considerations that we looked at for the need to review rates included our current operating costs that continue to rise along with inflation. And these are costs for just basic supplies, whether it's paper goods, bulk chlorine for the pools, supplies for programs and events, so on and so forth, and even services. As simple as a box of chips that used to cost, potato chips that used to cost less than $10 is now costing about $18, $19 when we purchase supplies for events, things like that. So those are continuing to rise. Another consideration was our facility maintenance costs. This year we've had to replace our domestic hot water boiler, our rate pack, and then even some of our smaller pieces of equipment, those costs have continued to rise. And then most importantly, what I want to really touch on is our need to invest in our part-time staff wages. That is a significant consideration. We still fall behind our peers when we review our pay rates for part-time wages. I do want to point out that there is a savings with our full-time staff with the retirement of our previous director, as well as taking the deputy director position and lowering that to a recreation manager position. We are saving in full-time staffing costs, but when we look at our part-time rates, and I did a survey of communities around Southeast Michigan. Lifeguards, for example, we start them, the starting rate, depending on their qualifications, is anywhere from $10.45 an hour to $12.95 an hour. But yet the going rate, when we look at like Rolling Hills Water Park, when we look at Mary Lou Murray, when we look at Canton Leisure Services, those rates are anywhere from $15 to $20 an hour. So we do need to make an investment in our part-time staff. Camp counselors, we start at $10.45 an hour. In this region, staff are, as camp counselors, are being paid anywhere from $12 to $17 an hour. So I'm looking at approximately a bare minimum of a 20% increase in staff wages, so that does need to be offset by membership increases. We have, in addition with our programs, across the board, we did about 5% going into January 1st of 2024 for program costs. What is the impact of a 6% increase? So that's what we're proposing is a 6% increase. That would be approximately $36,000 to $44,000 annually. And then one other thing I would like to note is that the membership rate, or I'm sorry, the resident rate versus our non-resident rate, that differential varied. So we had some packages where it was a 21% differential, all the way up to a 30%. So I propose that we are consistent, so that every membership package, your resident versus non-resident is a 30% differential.
And remind us, Director Lambert, because you and I discussed this last Thursday, the breakdown between resident and non-resident, it's about 75, 80, 20?
Yeah, approximately, yes.
Obviously
yes.
in favor of.
Yes, absolutely, yep.
And I also want to note, and you can affirm this, but these are the initial statement are my words, not yours. In non-inflationary times, I think an annual increase probably in the 2 to 4% range is probably more prudent.
Yes.
But we're living in extraordinary times in inflation that seems to be trending downward, but a few years ago was at a 40-year high. And I also am mindful that the Rec Center Sustainability Task Force chimed in on this issue multiple times and indicated that a cost of living adjustment in membership fees is something that we ought to be doing every year.
Yes, I would.
Not delaying 5-6 years, because that does have a significant impact on our bottom line.
And we had kept the rates for several years, and then we were trying to play catch up on that. I was last week in a meeting with other facility directors, and that was one of the questions, that was one of our topics of conversation, was membership increases. And it is quite common practice these days is to do an annual increase just to reflect the changes that happen, in our financial world. But yes, ideally, it would, our goal would be to only like a 2 to 3%, but these times are a little bit different right now.
And again, to your point, if you don't do this annually, you're playing catch-up, and then I think it's more of a surprise and more of a burden to our patrons than if you're doing something more nominal on an annual basis.
Correct.
It's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Questions? I'm sorry, did you have anything else, Director
No,
Lambert?
that was it. Thank you.
Questions for Director Lambert? I'll begin with Mr. Gearbaugh.
Sunshine, can you explain to us how you came about with the actual rate increases? Did the treasurer do an analysis to determine that the offset would be with these additional increases in payroll and whatever else to make sure that this increase will cover that and hopefully eat into some of the actual other inflationary?
Yeah, I actually sat down and did the analysis, looking at what our part-time costs are, for part-time staff, and what a 20% increase would look like, as well as I ran, those budget numbers for the 6% increase and what that impact would be for a full year.
And you said again, what would be a 20% increase in our payroll?
So a 20% increase in our payroll, that depends on if we're fully staffed, which we are not fully staffed with our part-time. If we were fully staffed, we're looking at probably about $40,000, a $40,000 impact, but that'd far exceed what I think the reality is.
My only concern is that it sounds like whatever we're going to get for the fee increase will be wiped out by that without any actual catching up on where we're behind on our other expenditures and such. So
yes, but I'd like to also go back to the point about with the full-time staff that we do have a significant cost savings with the reorganization of our full-time staff.
For my consideration, I know you're going 6%, but I felt that we should have gone at least to 10%. I mean, it's part of the thing is we have costs that are just continuing to go and go, and 6% may address some of these expenses, but I just don't think we're going to see this go down. I mean, this is where we're getting behind, but if this is what council goes for, I guess that's what we'll do. Then the other question I had, you mentioned resident versus non-resident. Does that resident include all the Pittsfield Township people?
Yes, that does. It's just Pittsfield Township Saline Schools. So if you're in Pittsfield Township, not Saline Schools, then that's considered a non-resident.
And we've always charged that way?
Correct, because of the agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Gearbach. After what we've learned today, I would prefer to put more of a burden on users than on taxpayers. Since this is sort of going to be a wash in the numbers that we're looking at here, I too would have liked to seen maybe more like a 10% increase. But, you know, I know that you're also working to increase other revenue avenues this year too, so I would be willing to kind of sit and watch it for a year, but maybe reevaluate next year and see where we're really at with increasing fees, like I said, toward users of the space.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. So there's a couple of things. Yeah, I wasn't quite understanding the math because when you do look at the impact of wages, we are kind of right at maybe a break even, 6%. And that's if we do not maximize that other position, which there is talk of doing that. I mean, we're still grossly understaffed with our lifeguards, and to be more competitive in wages for lifeguards and camp counselors, I mean, we're going to have to come up quite a bit to attract them. So I do think that a larger increase should be proposed at this point. The other thing that I would like to mention is that I'm also not in favor of a pull ahead, you know, re-up now and not get that, because we need those dollars. So I don't see the benefit to the city by having people renew their memberships now at the current day price, because what we're counting on is that income from the rate increase. So I want to be clear about that's a piece that I'm a bit concerned with, that we keep promoting, oh, you know, hurry up and renew now before the rate increase. Well, there's a reason for the rate increase, is that we need it to offset our costs. The other thing that I'm a little concerned with is where we are still with our lifeguard pay. I know we've had this discussion for the last couple of years, and that I know that a big issue in attracting is where we were. I thought we had agreed at least last year, if not 2 budgets ago, that we were going to kind of come up to kind of the current wage. I mean, when you see that McDonald's and such is paying at starting at $15, you know, that's a big offset of a difference in what we're paying. And we've talked about other avenues of what can we offer outside of actual pay dollars. Is there benefits that we can be giving to those? Because, you know, the biggest part of that is that if we move forward with this aquatic center, we're going to need a lot more lifeguards all the time. And, I mean, that's going to be a huge cost. And so kind of we're going to have to start filling that gap now of getting people in and understanding what that's going to look like. So I want to be very cognizant of that, because I do feel as though our wages are a little under where they need to be.
Okay, very good. Any additional discussion, questions? Mr. Seal?
Quick question. Family membership is 3 or more, as opposed to a dual, which is only 2?
Yeah, a dual is 2, although we have had individuals just with the senior family, sometimes instead of getting a dual, they prefer to get the senior family. So you could have 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any additional discussion on the motion, Mr. Gearbaum?
Just to clarify, I do like Ms. Dillon's, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon's consideration about not giving a discount to renew early. Is that still part of the proposal, or am I misunderstanding?
Well, there's not a discount per se, it's you get an extra month of membership, correct, Sunshine?
Well, that's the promotion, and that's actually for new members. Like, to attract new members, our December 1st through 10th promotion is to include the month of December, and then the entire year of 2024, so that they wouldn't have to renew until January 1st of 2025. So yes, that's a little bit different because that's the promotion. One of the reasons we offer a renewal discount and encourage people to renew early is really to retain members. So I think that's a common practice, whether it's for facilities such as ours or just any other type of business, which is driven on membership. It's really critical that you retain your membership and keep them coming back. And so if a family is now choosing to, if they, with the rates, if it maybe makes them think not to renew, I'd rather them renew at a lower rate. So it is a kind of a catch-22. I mean, you'll have some people who will jump on that and they'll renew, and others who might see the increased rates and decide not to.
And I will, for clarification, note the action is specific to amending our fee book via resolution. So it's more specific to the fees themselves, though I'm happy to take whatever materials Director Lambert has and share it in my upcoming communication and, weigh in council consideration on those topics.
Appreciate that. The idea with the new membership makes sense because that's all incremental money. We didn't have the renewals. It's give or take.
See, I, with greatest respect to my colleagues, I think that is a important marketing tool, and I think it is critical to offer some sort of benefit or incentive to people, individuals, families who have been members for a protracted period of time. I think that it will, in the end, bring some additional dollars into the rec center between now and the end of the calendar year if aggressively marketed and promoted. So I am very much in favor of that. As a compromise, I am mindful of what my colleagues have articulated from the dais this evening. While I would vote in favor of a 6% increase, if there was a desire to increase that to the 7 or 8% range, I could probably be amenable to that. But that's a decision that cannot be made by Brian Merrill alone, but rather the members present here this evening. Councilmember Rice, I believe you had a comment?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay, easy enough. We have a motion on the floor. If somebody would like to offer an amendment and it's appropriately worded, the chair would be happy to entertain that. But we do have a motion on the floor, moved by CO, seconded by Rice, to acknowledge and to adopt the membership fees as presented, which would be a 6% increase.
I'll move to amend it to increase it to 8%.
Okay, moved by Gearbaugh to modify the increase to 8% for 2024. Is that correct, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Correct.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. We'll use kind of formal parliamentary procedure this evening and vote on that separately. Everyone clear on that amendment? Okay, staff care to make any comment? No? No? Okay. All right, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon, to amend the rate increase for 2024 from 6% to 8%. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Now we'll revert back to the previous motion, which is to approve the increase, resolution number 20-23-238 for 2024 rec center membership fees. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. We move on to new business item 23-239, bid award, excavator purchase. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Director Searles and to award or not to award the bid of purchase of Takaguchi compact excavator from Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund in the amount of $53,100 to Adel Equipment.
Move to postpone based on request by Director Searles.
That's appropriate, but I do need to postpone it to a date certain, so would that be to our next meeting of December 4th?
That's sufficient?
Yes.
December 4th.
Okay, moved by Gearbaugh to postpone action to the next regular meeting of December 4th, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. If this motion passes, then this will appear as the first enumerated action item under unfinished business. Is there any discussion on the motion, Mr. Seal?
I'm sorry, I missed the purpose of the postponement.
Director Searles received some additional information late in the day today and just asked for more time to review that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? There is none. It's been properly moved and seconded to postpone until December 4th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Reports, announcements, and committee updates. Start with Councilmember Rice.
I do not have any reports. All my commission meetings are coming up.
Very good. Councilmember Del Orco.
Code review was canceled for this month, and Environmental Commission met. We spent the bulk of our time discussing ways we could reevaluate our commitment to the phased EV charger plan. There's a lot of things to sift through with that conversation, so I circulated earlier this afternoon a spreadsheet where Member Bruce Lay kind of worked out some specifics with what it would look like to replace our current EV vehicles, the Ford Focus, with a Bolt, and then the appropriate chargers to go with that, and it sounds like there's some benefit to the city in evaluating this proposal. So I would encourage all my council colleagues to have a look and maybe take this up as a discussion item at a subsequent meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaugh, any reports, announcements, committee updates?
Not at this time. The only recommendation I have for people is that we will have the Christmas at Rentschler Farm on December 9th. That'll be a Saturday from 12 to 4.
Very good. Councilmember Dillon, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
No reports at this time.
Mr. Seal.
Saline Area Senior Citizens Board this morning was canceled because of a lack of a quorum, so I have nothing to report.
Very good. Then we proceed to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening again, Changming Fan, local social entrepreneur. I'm talking about strategic plan training session. What we call that last time was very, very successful. And also, I have all of the important pictures, photos, and recorded, and I want to give back to you and the public, which is very important for us to remember what we learned, we promised. And that's one thing. Another thing is that recently, as you probably know, Michigan is leading the healthy climate plan change of the nation. The governor, Gretchen Whitmer, has this commitment, 2050 will be net zero of carbon emission. So therefore, the funding follows, and new initiative, new trainings is already getting started. I have been involved and also have received the invitation. I submitted the abstract. Whether or not I can get chance to talk, but however, I got a very positive response and encouragement for me to continue, which is very important to work with local entrepreneurs, the government, the schools. Specifically, one is the project what I initiated, South Initiative. But it's more than what I presented to you, and it's bigger than what I presented to you and the school Board of Education. So I really appreciate that one of you or some of you can work with me. And there are a lot of things related with the funding. As Mr. CEO mentioned about that, for all of this, where the money come from? I would say 3 resources. Number one is FFF, as you know that from friends. That's one thing. Another thing, venture capitalist. And another way is from the government, visionary government, which is we have, both from the White House, Lansing, and here. You're all visionary. You did a great job. What I'm here is just try to say that it is coming, it is accelerating, and it is very, very good situation. So Michigan should lead. Saline should lead, not just catch. And I believe that if we work together, still not too late. I have 18 hours left to submit another one, which is the application for the host. And there's something, is a scholarship, or if you cannot pay down payments to something. So I'm very happy to see that regardless, everything else, we're in the really right direction. I need your help, guidance, and continued support. Thank you.
Thank you, Changming. Are there any additional citizen comments this evening? Clerk Royal, I defer to you. Is there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time?
No, sir.
Easy enough. Then please note our upcoming meetings, including a meeting that was scheduled earlier this evening for December 11th to revisit the sustainability of our rec center and the rec center expansion proposal that was worked out by a consultant formerly engaged by the city. And then there's a litany of board, commission, and other committee appointments between now and the end of the year. If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:46 p.m. Moved by Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Del Orco. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.